Good morning, Professor. My name is Andrew Hadiputra, and today I'll be discussing about Assessment 3 Task 1. So there are 5 questions that are in the table of contents here, and for the 4 questions, I have drawn the diagram, the graph, and for the 5th question, I have drawn the DAG diagram to discuss more about it. For the first slide, I'll be talking about the consumer and producer surplus that is happening in the equilibrium of a demand and supply diagram before taxes. So consumer surplus is the difference between what consumers pay and what they would have been willing to pay, and is labeled in the blue triangle. And the producer surplus is the difference between the price a company receives and the price it will be willing to sell, which is labeled in the orange triangle. So now I'll be talking about the consumption taxes and welfare impact that is imposed in the economy. So this graph shows the deadweight loss in the case of a consumption tax levied on the supplier. Consumption taxes, such as sales tax, increases the cost of goods and services for consumers, and it can be shown in the rectangle as consumer tax and producer tax. As a result, individuals and households may reduce their spending on these items, and this reduces the overall level of consumer spending and supply in the economy. Consumption taxes increases the cost of production, reducing willingness and ability to supply goods and services at the same level, and this then results in a leftward shift in the S-curve, showing reduced supply. Furthermore, the decrease in the consumer spending also leads to a lower level of overall demand in the economy. Now I'll be talking about consumer welfare and producer welfare. So consumer welfare, because the supply shifts upward due to the consumption tax, the new market price is higher than the pre-tax price. Therefore, consumer surplus decreases as consumers now pay a higher price for the same quantity, causing the demand to decrease, and it can be seen from the movement along the demand curve. As price increase does not cause a shift in the demand curve, there's only movement along the demand curve. For the producer welfare, the producer surplus will decrease as well because producers receive a lower price due to the imposed tax, reducing profits. Since consumption and production of consumers and production decreases, it creates a gap between equilibrium 1 and equilibrium 2, called the deadweight loss, which is labeled in the orange triangle. So what is deadweight loss? It is basically the market inefficiency and underproduction caused by taxes. It is the area that represents the reduction in overall economic welfare due to the consumption tax. It is the net loss of both consumer and producer welfare. Now we're talking about the tariff, which is a tax on import that is imposed by the government. So in a free trade scenario, the market equilibrium is determined by the intersection of the domestic supply and global demand curves. As the government imposes a tax on imports, this effectively raises the price by consumers and lowers the price received by producers. Thus, the new equilibrium price shifts upwards by the amount of the tariff in the demand and supply diagram. Without a tariff, domestic consumers can purchase imported goods. When a tariff is introduced, the price of the imported goods rises, causing domestic producers to supply more and domestic consumers to demand less. The difference between the new demand and supply is the reduced quantity of imports. The government revenue is from the tariff, but the market experiences a deadweight loss. So the deadweight loss in question 2 is a triangular region similar to question 1, but it lies between the domestic supply and demand curves. So below the new price after tax, but above the free trade supply, thus shows the loss of overall economic welfare due to the tariff. However, it is different to the deadweight loss from question 1, where the government collects taxes from the consumer and producer surpluses. To summarize, while tariff protects domestic industries and generate revenue for the government, this can also lead to inefficiencies and reduce welfare in the domestic economy. The consumer surplus is the area underneath the demand curve above the price, and since the price of the tariff is higher, consumer surplus is now lower because consumers pay higher prices for imported goods. So domestic producers of similar goods might benefit from the tariff because it makes imported goods more expensive, making domestic alternatives more attractive so they can produce more. So therefore, the producer surplus increases because producers can increase their production and sales due to the reduced competition from imports. For the next slide, I'll be talking about the imposition of consumption taxes on the macroeconomy side. So a consumption tax is a tax imposed on the purchase of goods or service, and when a consumption tax is implemented, it effectively raises the price of goods and services for consumers. As a result, consumers may reduce their spending as they have lower disposable income, and this reduction in consumer spending can lead to a decrease in aggregate demand. It can result in a shift in the aggregate demand curve to the left as seen on the diagram. As the analysis is focusing on the consumption, the supply side will be ignored and there will be only movement along the short run aggregate supply as price decreases, and price only causes along a movement along the curve. So for the next slide, I'll be talking about the health taxes and economic growth, whether this can lead to a better GDP and boost the economy. So a health tax imposed on products that are harmful to health, such as sugary beverages, tobacco products, have a few benefits for the economy. Higher production costs causes a leftward shift in the short run aggregate supply curve. In the short run, and this shift occurs because firms face high costs for producing and selling unhealthy goods, which reduces their willingness and ability to supply goods at the previous levels. The long-term impact on the long-run aggregate supply curve depends on how the tax influences the economy's productive capacity. So if the tax leads to improved public health, such as reduced rates of chronic diseases, increased workforce productivity, and longer lifespans, it can then positively affect the long-run aggregate supply curve. A healthier workforce can be more productive, leading to an increase in the economy's productive capacity, and this in turn shifts the long-run aggregate supply curve to the right over time. A tax on unhealthy goods may reduce consumer spending on those items, on the unhealthy goods, and in the short run, this could lead to a leftward shift in the aggregate demand curve as people reduce their consumption of such goods. However, in the long run, if the tax leads to improved public health outcomes, it can positively affect the AD curve. A healthier population is generally more productive and may have an increased disposable income due to the reduced healthcare costs. So this can lead to increased consumer spending and a rightward shift in the AD curve over time in the long run. So to sum up, a tax that improves people's health has long-term benefits for the economy because it increased in productivity, which boosted the real GDP, leading to economic growth. An econometric model can be applied to find the correlation between tax that improves people's health and economic growth. A DAG can help identify potential confounders and guide the econometric analysis. For example, fat taxes are now imposed worldwide to control a negative health outcome by taxing unhealthy products. It can be also interpreted in the econometric model that the fat tax is an independent variable and the health is a dependent variable. The dependent variable, which is health, relies on the independent variable fat taxes, as the imposing fat taxes is projected to bring a better and positive health outcome in the society. However, governments are aware that imposing fat tax may decrease the economy in the short run as a negative wealth effect. However, in the long run, if the overall health in a society increases by imposing fat taxes, it is likely to increase the productivity of people, which in turn improve the real GDP and the economy. Therefore, the confounder will be the economy, as economy can be impacted by both fat taxes and health. And adding the economy variable allows us to absorb the negative and positive relationship to discover the true effect of imposing fat taxes. That is the end of my presentation. Thank you for listening. My name is Hadiputra. Good day.